I was buttoning my winter coat, checking my watch for Sunday brunch at my sister Emma's house, when my phone buzzed. Text from my estate lawyer, David, "Call me now, do not go there." My hands shook as I dialed. David's voice was urgent. "Emma filed emergency guardianship papers claiming you're mentally incompetent. She's requesting immediate control of your inheritance and business. The hearing is tomorrow morning and she's been gathering evidence for months. Frank, she's trying to steal everything your father left you." I sat heavily on my apartment steps, phone still pressed to my ear as David explained the devastating details. The cold November morning felt like it was seeping through my bones, but nothing compared to the chill running down my spine. Emma had submitted medical records claiming I showed signs of severe depression and erratic behavior since our father's death 6 months ago. She included witness statements from family friends, and even our shared cleaning lady, Maria Santos. My mind raced back to just 24 hours earlier when Emma had called to confirm Sunday brunch. "I'm making Dad's favorite pancakes," she had said with that warm, caring tone I'd grown up trusting. "You need to eat better, Frank. I worry about you living alone in that apartment." Now I understood her real concern wasn't my nutrition, but my net worth. At 28, I had recently inherited our father's successful construction company worth $2.4 million, plus the family home in suburban Denver. Emma, 31, had always been the responsible older sister working as a hospital administrator. Throughout our father's illness and after his funeral, she seemed genuinely supportive, always asking how. I was handling the business offering to help with paperwork, suggesting I should take it easy while grieving. David's voice brought me back to the present nightmare. "She hired a private investigator 3 months ago to document your supposed erratic behavior. Frank, she has photographs of you leaving Murphy's Tavern at midnight, missing that supplier meeting in September, looking disheveled outside the grocery store last week. What you remember as normal grieving and occasional drinks with Tyler, she's twisted into evidence of mental breakdown and substance abuse." I remembered that September meeting. I had been at the hospital with Dad's old foreman who was having heart surgery. Emma knew this because I had texted her about it. The night at Murphy's Tavern was Tyler's birthday celebration. The grocery store incident was me rushing out to buy flowers for Dad's grave on what would have been his 65th birthday. "There's more," David continued, his voice getting grimmer. "She's claiming you've been making irrational business decisions, that the company is losing money under your management, that you've been drinking during work hours. She has sworn statements from 3 employees saying you seemed confused and emotional during recent meetings." My throat felt tight. Those employees were the ones I'd had to let go last month because of reduced contracts over the winter season. Standard business practice that Dad had done every November for 15 years. Emma knew this too. She'd helped Dad with the books during his final months. David pressed on with more crushing revelations. "She filed these papers through Bradley Hoffman in court administration. He expedited the process under emergency provisions, claiming you pose a danger to yourself and the business. Frank, the hearing is at 9 tomorrow morning. She's asking for immediate temporary guardianship with full control over all assets pending a competency evaluation." I thought about all those family dinners over the past months, every concerned phone call asking about my emotional state, every time Emma offered to help with Dad's business affairs. She'd been building her case while I thought she was being a caring sister. Every vulnerable moment I'd shared, every tear I'd shed missing our father, she'd been cataloging as evidence of my unfitness. "What about our father's will?" I asked, grasping for something solid in this collapsing world. "That's another problem. Emma's presenting a version that names both of you as equal inheritors, but with a clause stating that if either sibling is deemed incompetent, the other assumes full control. I've never seen this version before, Frank. Your father and I drew up his will together and there was no such clause." My stomach dropped. Emma had somehow altered Dad's will or forged an entirely new one. The woman who used to read me bedtime stories and taught me to ride a bicycle was systematically destroying my life for money. The final blow came when David revealed that Emma had already moved into our father's house yesterday, claiming she needed to secure the property for my own good. She changed the locks and had my belongings boxed up sitting on the front porch when neighbors woke up this morning. Mrs. Henderson next door called David's office after seeing the boxes, worried something had happened to me. I realized the Sunday brunch invitation was meant to keep me occupied and away from the house while she completed her takeover. Emma had outmaneuvered me completely, using my grief and trust against me while I believed she was helping me heal. David, how could she do this? We're family. After everything we went through with Dad's illness, watching him fade away, holding his hand when he died. How could she plan this while we were mourning together? I don't know, Frank, but we need to focus on fighting this. The hearing is in 18 hours and we have a lot of work to do. As I hung up, I sat staring at the invitation text from Emma, still glowing on my phone screen. Can't wait to see you tomorrow, little brother. Love you. The casual cruelty of maintaining that loving facade while filing legal papers to steal my inheritance made my hands shake with rage I'd never felt before. I drove to our father's house with my heart pounding, David's warnings echoing in my head. Emma's silver Honda Civic sat in the driveway where my truck should have been parked. The sight of her car in Dad's spot felt like another small violation, another piece of our family history being erased. I circled the block twice before remembering the hidden spare key Dad had shown me years ago, tucked behind the loose brick near the basement entrance. Emma never knew about it because she'd moved out for college before Dad installed it. My hands trembled as I felt along the familiar brick wall, finding the small magnetic box exactly where Dad had left it. The basement entrance opened quietly, and I slipped inside our childhood refuge. Dad's workshop still smelled like sawdust and motor oil. His tools hung in perfect order on the pegboard wall just as he'd left them. Being surrounded by his presence while learning about Emma's betrayal felt surreal. I could hear Emma's voice upstairs talking on the phone in the kitchen. Moving carefully up the basement stairs, I positioned myself where I could hear through the old heating vent Dad had never properly sealed. Bradley, everything's going exactly as we planned. Emma was saying, her voice carrying none of the warmth she'd used with me yesterday. The paperwork is filed, the hearing is scheduled, and Frank has no idea what's coming. By tomorrow afternoon, I'll have legal control over everything. My blood ran cold. Bradley Hoffman wasn't just a court administrator helping process paperwork. He was Emma's partner in this scheme. I told you the private investigator was worth every penny, Emma continued. Those photos of Frank leaving bars and looking scattered are perfect evidence. Combined with the employee statements about his emotional instability, Judge Williams will have no choice but to grant emergency guardianship. I pulled out my phone and started recording my hand steadier now that I had a concrete task. Emma's voice carried clearly through the old house's thin walls. The medical records from Dr. Green were the masterstroke, she said with obvious satisfaction. Frank actually went to grief counseling after Dad died, which shows he acknowledged having emotional problems. Dr. Green documented his emotional distress in the files, thinking he was being helpful. I just reframed those compassionate notes as evidence of mental instability. My stomach lurched. Dr. Green had encouraged me to talk about my feelings after losing Dad. He'd been proud of me for seeking healthy ways to process grief. Emma had poisoned that healing process by using it as ammunition against me. Bradley, you're brilliant for suggesting we target families going through loss. People are most vulnerable when they're grieving and their judgment is clouded by emotion. Frank trusted me completely because he needed family support. He never suspected I was documenting everything he said and did. I had to grip the stair railing to keep from rushing upstairs and confronting her. Emma wasn't just stealing from me, she was describing a systematic approach to destroying grieving families. The beauty is that Frank's own actions gave us most of the evidence, Emma continued. He really was drinking more after Dad died. He really did miss some business meetings because he was struggling emotionally, and he really was making decisions based on sentiment rather than pure profit. I didn't have to fabricate much, I just had to reframe normal grief responses as signs of incompetence. Emma moved to the living room and I adjusted my position to keep recording. Through a crack in the basement door, I could see her feet pacing across Dad's Persian rug, the one he'd bought during his only vacation to Iran 30 years ago. "Once I have guardianship, we move fast," Emma said. "The house goes on the market immediately. I already have a real estate agent lined up who specializes in quick sales. The construction business gets sold to Morrison Development. They've been trying to buy Dad out for years, and they'll pay premium for immediate acquisition." Morrison Development was our biggest competitor. Dad had fought their attempts to monopolize local construction for decades. Emma was planning to hand them our family business on a silver platter. "Frank will be devastated, but by then it'll be too late. The money will be safely invested in accounts he can't access, and if he challenges the guardianship, we'll have months or years of legal proceedings. Meanwhile, the assets will be earning returns under my management." I realized Emma hadn't just planned to steal my inheritance. She'd planned to torture me with the knowledge of my helplessness, watching her dismantle everything Dad built while being legally powerless to stop her. "The best part is that Frank's grief made him completely predictable," Emma said with chilling satisfaction. "He withdrew socially, relied on me for emotional support, and made himself look unstable to outside observers. Every time he cried about missing Dad or expressed uncertainty about business decisions, he was building my case for me." My phone showed 12 minutes of recorded conversation. Emma's voice was clear, her admissions were explicit, and her casual cruelty was documented forever. But as I listened to her describe my vulnerabilities with such clinical detachment, I felt something shift inside me. The initial shock was hardening into cold determination. "Bradley, after we finish with Frank's case, we should look for our next target. Grief makes people so malleable, and there are always families dealing with loss who have significant assets worth protecting." Emma laughed, a sound I'd never heard from her before. It was calculating and predatory. "We've perfected the system with Frank. Establish trust during the crisis. Document vulnerable behavior, manipulate medical and employment records, then strike with emergency legal action when they're least prepared to defend themselves. Frank taught us exactly how to refine our approach for future families. I wasn't just Emma's brother. I was her test case, her practice run for a larger criminal enterprise." The realization that she saw me as nothing more than a profitable experiment filled me with rage so pure it was almost clarifying. Emma's phone call ended, and I heard her moving toward the kitchen. I had what I needed, but as I prepared to leave, I heard her make another call. "Mr. Patterson, this is Emma Thompson. Yes, I'm ready to schedule the house showing for Monday afternoon. I know it's fast, but I need to liquidate the property immediately for family medical expenses." She was already scheduling the sale of Dad's house 24 hours before the hearing that would supposedly give her legal authority to do so. Emma was so confident in her scheme that she was moving forward as if my defeat was already guaranteed. I slipped out through the basement, my mind racing with the documented evidence of Emma's conspiracy. She'd revealed not only her plan to steal from me, but her intention to target other grieving families. This wasn't just personal anymore. It was about stopping a predator. I met Tyler Rodriguez at Murphy's Diner, a 24-hour place near the interstate where we'd spent countless late nights during college. Tyler had been my best friend since freshman year, and he was the one person I could trust completely. His concerned expression told me he already suspected something serious had happened. Frank, you sounded terrible on the phone. What's going on?" Tyler asked as I slid into the familiar booth, my hands still shaking from what I'd discovered at Dad's house. I played him the recording of Emma's conversation, watching his expression change from confusion to disbelief to anger. Tyler worked in cybersecurity for a financial firm, so he understood both legal procedures and digital evidence better than most people. "This is insane, Frank. Emma's describing a criminal enterprise, not a family dispute. She's talking about systematically targeting grieving families and stealing their assets through fraudulent legal proceedings." Tyler paused the recording and looked at me with genuine concern. "How long has she been planning this?" "According to what I just heard, at least a year. Maybe longer." I felt nauseated thinking about every family dinner, every concerned phone call, every moment I'd been grateful for Emma's support while she was secretly building a case against me. Tyler was quiet for several minutes, processing the implications. Finally, he spoke with the analytical clarity that made him excellent at his job. We have 18 hours until the hearing, and Emma has a significant head start. But she's made some crucial mistakes. First, she documented her criminal conspiracy on a recorded phone call. Second, she's moving too fast with the house sale, which shows consciousness of guilt. Third, she's working with someone inside the court system, which is a separate crime. What do you think we should do? I asked, feeling overwhelmed by the legal complexities. We build a counterattack using the same systematic approach she used against you. We gather witnesses, collect evidence, and expose her lies before she can present them as facts. Tyler pulled out his notebook and started making a list. Tell me about Maria Santos, the cleaning lady who supposedly gave a statement about your behavior. I remembered Maria as a quiet, hard-working woman who'd cleaned Dad's house twice a week for over 5 years. She'd always been kind to me, and I'd made sure to continue employing her after Dad's death because I knew she depended on the income. Maria lives in the West Side neighborhood, and she has family members who might be vulnerable to immigration threats, Tyler observed. If Emma coerced her testimony through intimidation, Maria might be willing to recant if she feels protected. We drove to Maria's small house where I found her tending a vegetable garden, despite the November cold. When she saw me, her expression became fearful and guilty. I realized Emma had probably threatened her severely to secure her cooperation. Señora Santos, I said gently in Spanish, a language skill Emma didn't know I possessed from working construction sites with bilingual crews. I know my sister forced you to lie about me. I'm not angry with you, but I need your help to stop her from hurting other families. Maria's relief was immediate and overwhelming. Tears streamed down her face as she explained in rapid Spanish how Emma had threatened to call immigration authorities about her nephew Luis, who was working without proper documentation to support his sick mother. She told me you were drinking too much and acting crazy and that she needed to protect you from yourself, Maria said, switching to English as her confidence grew. But I told her you were always respectful and kind, that you seemed sad but not crazy. She said if I didn't sign the papers saying you were acting strangely, she would make sure Luis was deported. Tyler recorded Maria's statement on his phone while I translated key portions. Maria agreed to provide a sworn affidavit recanting her coerced testimony and detailing Emma's threats. She also revealed that Emma had asked her to specifically observe and report any unusual behavior, essentially turning her into an unwilling spy in Dad's house. Our next stop was Dr. Green's emergency clinic, where the family physician was working a weekend shift. Dr. Green had been our family doctor since childhood, and he'd shown genuine compassion during Dad's illness and death. Learning how Emma had manipulated his care made me angry on his behalf as well as my own. Frank, I'm shocked to hear how my notes about your grief counseling were misrepresented, Dr. Green said after I explained the situation. You were handling your father's death in a healthy, mature way. Seeking counseling shows emotional intelligence, not instability. Grief is a normal response to loss, not a mental health crisis. Dr. Green agreed to provide a corrective statement emphasizing that grief counseling was recommended and beneficial, not evidence of incompetence. He also revealed that Emma had specifically requested copies of my medical records, claiming she was worried about my mental state and wanted to help me get appropriate treatment. She seemed genuinely concerned, Dr. Green admitted. I thought she was being a caring sister. I had no idea she was gathering evidence to use against you in legal proceedings. That's a serious violation of the trust implicit in family relationships. Tyler's cybersecurity expertise proved invaluable when we returned to his apartment. Using passwords I remembered from our childhood, we accessed Emma's social media accounts and discovered months of posts carefully crafting a public narrative about her growing responsibilities and difficult family decisions. Look at this, Tyler said, pointing to a Facebook post from 6 weeks ago. Emma posted about taking on new responsibilities to help family members who are struggling with grief. She's been building a public record of herself as the responsible caregiver long before filing legal papers. We found posts about making difficult decisions for family members who can't think clearly right now. And sometimes love means making unpopular choices to protect the people you care about. Emma had been creating a social media record supporting her guardianship petition while maintaining the pretense of loving concern. The most damaging discovery was a series of private messages between Emma and her friend Jennifer Walsh, where Emma complained about my emotional instability and poor business decisions in terms that matched her legal filings exactly. She'd been rehearsing her arguments against me in casual conversations, testing which accusations would sound most convincing. Tyler's most important contribution was introducing me to his cousin Carmen Rodriguez, who practiced family and elder law with a focus on protecting vulnerable individuals from exploitation. Carmen agreed to meet us at her office despite the weekend timing after Tyler explained the urgency of the situation. Carmen listened to our evidence with professional intensity, taking notes and asking pointed questions about dates, witnesses, and documentation. Her expertise in guardianship cases made her immediately recognize the signs of a fraudulent proceeding. "This isn't just family greed," Carmen said after reviewing everything we'd gathered. "Emma and Bradley Hoffman are running a sophisticated criminal operation targeting vulnerable families. Frank, your case fits a pattern I've been investigating for months in connection with other suspicious guardianship proceedings." Carmen revealed that Bradley Hoffman had been flagged by the State Bar Association for irregularities in how he processed emergency guardianship cases. Several families had complained about rushed proceedings and inadequate notification, but no one had been able to prove systematic misconduct until now. "Your recording of Emma's conversation provides evidence of conspiracy, fraud, and corruption of court proceedings," Carmen explained. "But we need to move quickly. I'll file emergency motions tonight to delay the hearing and request judicial investigation into Bradley's role. We'll also request that Judge Williams recuse herself if she received case information through compromised channels." The final piece of our evidence gathering involved reaching out to extended family members who had been influenced by Emma's manipulation. I called our Aunt Rebecca and Uncle Thomas, who had seemed distant and concerned about me lately without understanding why. "Frank, Emma told us you were having a breakdown and were too proud to accept help," Aunt Rebecca explained. "She said you were drinking heavily and making irrational business decisions. We were worried about approaching you directly because she said confrontation might make your mental state worse." Uncle Thomas added, "Emma asked us to be prepared to testify about any concerning behavior we'd observed, saying she might need family support for an intervention. We thought she was trying to help you, Frank. We had no idea she was building a legal case." Both my aunt and uncle were horrified to learn the truth and immediately offered their support and testimony. They remembered Emma's childhood tendency toward manipulation and control patterns they'd hoped she'd outgrown as an adult. As we finished gathering evidence and building our legal strategy, I felt the crushing helplessness of the morning transform into focused determination. Emma had systematically exploited my grief and trust, but her overconfidence had led her to create a documented trail of her crimes. "Frank, we have 18 hours to save your inheritance and expose a criminal conspiracy," Carmen said as we concluded our strategy session. "Emma thinks she's destroyed you, but she's actually given us everything we need to destroy her case and protect other families from the same exploitation." Tyler gripped my shoulder as we prepared to leave Carmen's office. "Emma underestimated you, Frank. She saw grief and vulnerability where she should have seen strength and integrity. Tomorrow, we show her the difference." Carmen worked through the night filing emergency motions that would fundamentally change the dynamic of Monday morning's hearing. Her legal filings included requests to delay proceedings pending investigation of court corruption demands for Bradley Hoffman's recusal due to conflict of interest and formal complaints with the State Bar Association about his irregular handling of guardianship cases. While Carmen handled the legal strategy, Tyler and I executed a carefully planned information campaign designed to counter Emma's months of manipulation. We reached out to every family member, family friend, and business associate who might have been influenced by Emma's false narrative about my mental state. The responses were both heartening and infuriating. Person after person revealed how Emma had approached them with concerns about my emotional stability, asking them to monitor my behavior and report anything unusual. she'd turned our entire social network into unwitting surveillance agents, each believing they were helping a concerned sister protect her troubled brother. My father's longtime business partner, Robert Chen, was particularly angry when he learned the truth. Emma called me 3 weeks ago, Frank. She said you were struggling with depression and might make rash decisions about the company. She asked me to document any instances where you seemed confused or emotional during our meetings. I thought she was being protective. Robert immediately agreed to provide testimony about my competent management of the business and Emma's suspicious attempts to gather negative information. He also revealed that Morrison Development had approached him recently about potential acquisition opportunities, suggesting Emma had been coordinating with our competitors while publicly supporting the family business. The most crucial conversation was with Judge Patricia Williams's clerk, who confirmed that Bradley Hoffman had expedited our case using emergency protocols reserved for imminent danger situations. Carmen's motion to investigate these irregularities would force examination of whether proper procedures had been followed. Sunday evening, I made the difficult decision to attend family dinner at Aunt Rebecca's house, where Emma would be present along with other relatives. Carmen had equipped me with a small recording device, and we'd rehearse strategies for getting Emma to reveal incriminating information in front of witnesses. Emma arrived at dinner confident and relaxed, clearly believing her victory was assured. She greeted me with the same warm affection she'd always shown, asking about my emotional state and offering to help with any difficulties I was experiencing. "Frank, you look tired," Emma said with apparent concern as we sat around Rebecca's dining table. "Are you eating properly?" "Sleeping enough. I know Dad's death has been hard on both of us, but I worry about how you're coping alone." The casual cruelty of maintaining her loving facade while having filed papers to steal my inheritance required tremendous self-control not to confront immediately. Instead, I followed Carmen's advice to let Emma reveal her true nature through seemingly innocent questions. "Emma, I've been thinking about Dad's plans for the business," I said carefully. "He always talked about keeping it in the family building, something that would last for generations. What do you think he would want us to do with his legacy?" Emma's expression flickered almost imperceptibly before she composed herself. "Frank, sometimes we have to make practical decisions rather than sentimental ones. Dad built the business to provide financial security for our family. If circumstances change, we need to be flexible about how to preserve that security." Uncle Thomas looked puzzled. What kind of circumstances would require changing James's plans? He was very clear about wanting Frank to continue the business. Dad made those plans when he thought Frank would be in a better position to handle such responsibilities, Emma said smoothly. "Grief affects people differently. Sometimes the most loving thing to do is make difficult decisions to protect someone we care about." Aunt Rebecca frowned. "Emma, are you suggesting Frank isn't capable of running the business? He seems to be managing quite well under difficult circumstances." Emma's mask slipped slightly as she realized the family wasn't automatically supporting her narrative. "I'm just saying that major business decisions require clear judgment, and grief can cloud our thinking. Sometimes we need objective perspectives to make the best choices." I pressed further, following Carmen's script designed to elicit admissions. "What kind of objective perspectives, Emma? Are you thinking about bringing in outside consultants or business advisors?" "Well, there are legal processes designed to protect people during vulnerable periods," Emma said, her voice becoming more careful as she sensed the shifting family dynamics. "Sometimes temporary assistance with major decisions can prevent long-term mistakes." Uncle Thomas's expression hardened. "Emma, are you talking about guardianship proceedings? Those are for people who are genuinely incapacitated, not for grieving relatives who might need emotional support." Emma realized she'd revealed too much and attempted to backtrack. "I'm not talking about anything specific. I just think Frank deserves protection and support during this difficult time." But the damage was done. Our extended family had heard Emma discussing legal processes to remove my decision-making authority, and her justification sounded manipulative rather than caring. The recording device captured everything, including the family members' shocked reactions to Emma's revelations. After dinner, I followed Emma to her car, maintaining the pretense of normal brotherly conversation while wearing the recording device. She seemed nervous about the family's response to her comments and eager to reassure herself about her plans. "Frank, you know I only want what's best for you," Emma said as she unlocked her car door. "Sometimes protecting someone means making choices they won't initially understand or appreciate." "What choices are you talking about, Emma?" I asked gently, giving her an opportunity to explain herself. Emma paused, studying my expression in the parking lot light. "Tomorrow might bring some changes that will seem dramatic at first, but everything I'm doing is motivated by love and concern for your well-being. I need you to trust that I'm acting in your best interests, even if you don't agree with my methods." "What's happening tomorrow, Emma?" I pressed, hoping she would reveal details about the hearing. "Some legal matters that have been pending will be resolved," she said carefully. "Decisions about Dad's estate and the business that need to be made by someone with clear judgment and emotional stability. Frank, I promise you'll understand eventually that this is all for your own good." Emma's attempt to frame her betrayal as loving protection was captured clearly on the recording. Her admission that she was making decisions about Dad's estate without my knowledge or consent provided additional evidence of her fraudulent conspiracy. As Emma drove away, I felt a mixture of sadness and determination. The sister I'd loved and trusted my entire life had revealed herself to be calculating and predatory. But her overconfidence and need to justify her actions had given us additional evidence for tomorrow's legal battle. Carmen reviewed the dinner recordings and confirmed they strengthened our case significantly. Emma's admissions about making decisions regarding the estate, combined with family witnesses who could testify about her suspicious comments, provided compelling evidence of her fraudulent intentions. "Frank, Emma's behavior tonight shows someone who believes she's already won," Carmen observed. "She's acting like someone who has secret knowledge about tomorrow's proceedings. That confidence will work against her when we expose the conspiracy behind her guardianship petition." Tyler spent the evening creating a comprehensive digital file of all our evidence: Emma's recorded conversations, witness statements, social media posts, medical clarifications, and family testimonies. But yes, our case had evolved from defending against false accusations to exposing a criminal enterprise that threatened other vulnerable families. As I prepared for bed on what might be my last night as a free person, I thought about my father's values and what he would expect me to do in this situation. Dad had taught me that integrity meant standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult or costly. Tomorrow's hearing wasn't just about protecting my inheritance. It was about honoring his memory by refusing to let criminals destroy the legacy he built through decades of honest work. Emma had taught me that family betrayal was possible, but she'd also shown me that true allies could be found among friends and extended family who shared fundamental values of honesty and loyalty. The battle tomorrow would determine not just my financial future, but whether justice could triumph over sophisticated manipulation and corruption. Carmen's legal strategy for Monday morning required gathering additional evidence that would expose the full scope of Emma and Bradley's criminal enterprise. Working with Tyler's cybersecurity expertise, we arranged a carefully orchestrated sting operation designed to get Bradley Hoffman to reveal the extent of their conspiracy on record. I called Bradley's office early Monday morning, identifying myself as Emma's brother and requesting an urgent meeting before the hearing. I claimed to be willing to cooperate with the guardianship proceedings if certain financial arrangements could be made to ensure my comfort and dignity. Bradley agreed to meet at a coffee shop near the courthouse, clearly believing he was dealing with a defeated Frank who wanted to negotiate surrender terms. His willingness to meet without Emma present suggested their partnership involved independent decision-making and profit-sharing arrangements. Tyler positioned himself at a nearby table with recording equipment, while Carmen waited in her car outside, ready to intervene if the conversation became problematic. I wore a wire provided by Carmen's investigator contact, ensuring we'd capture every detail of Bradley's admissions. Bradley arrived looking confident and slightly smug, carrying a briefcase that presumably contained additional legal documents. He greeted me with false sympathy and condescending concern about my emotional state. "Frank, I'm glad you called," Bradley said as we sat down with our coffee. "Emma's been worried about how you'd handle today's proceedings. She really does want what's best for you, even though it might not seem that way initially. I'm starting to understand that fighting this guardianship petition might be futile, I said, following the script Carmen had prepared. But I need to know what my life will look like if Emma gains control over my assets. Will I have any input into decisions about the business and property, say? Bradley's expression became more calculating as he sensed an opportunity to close the deal quickly. Frank, the beauty of guardianship arrangements is that they're designed to protect people from the stress of major financial decisions. You'll be able to focus on your emotional recovery while responsible parties handle the complex business matters. What kind of business matters? I asked, encouraging him to reveal specific plans. Well, Emma's already identified several optimization opportunities, Bradley said, pulling out a folder from his briefcase. The construction company has been underperforming relative to market potential. There are acquisition offers from larger firms that would provide immediate liquidity and eliminate management responsibilities. He showed me preliminary documents from Morrison Development, offering to purchase Dad's construction company for $3.2 million, significantly above the assessed value Carmen had calculated. The premium price suggested Morrison was paying extra for rapid acquisition and elimination of competition. Emma's also consulted with real estate professionals about the family home, Bradley continued. The property is worth more as a development opportunity than as a single-family residence. The entire neighborhood block could be rezoned for commercial use, generating substantial returns on investment. I felt sick hearing Bradley describe the destruction of our family legacy in terms of optimization opportunities and liquidity generation. Dad's construction company had built half the houses in our neighborhood, creating a community of working families. Emma and Bradley planned to tear it all down for profit. How long have you and Emma been planning these optimizations? I asked, hoping to establish the timeline of their conspiracy. Bradley smiled, apparently pleased to share his strategic thinking with someone he considered defeated. Emma contacted me about 18 months ago, right after your father's cancer diagnosis. She was concerned about estate planning and wanted to understand legal options for protecting family assets if circumstances became complicated. 18 months ago, Dad had just begun chemotherapy and was optimistic about his treatment prospects. Emma had been planning to steal my inheritance since before Dad was even terminally ill. She'd been calculating our family's destruction while pretending to support us through his medical crisis. Senior. She's remarkably intelligent about identifying efficiency opportunities, Bradley continued. Most people don't think strategically about estate management until it's too late. Emma understood that preparation and documentation would be essential for optimal outcomes. Bradley's euphemistic language couldn't hide the reality that he was describing systematic exploitation of a family's tragedy for financial gain. His casual discussion of their planning process revealed a level of premeditation that elevated their crimes from opportunistic theft to calculated criminal enterprise. And how many other families have you helped with similar optimization strategies? I asked, hoping to gather evidence about additional victims. Emma and I have consulted on several estate protection cases, Bradley said proudly. Guardianship law is surprisingly complex, and most people don't understand how to navigate emergency procedures effectively. We've developed streamlined processes that minimize delays and complications. He pulled out another folder containing what appeared to be templates and checklists for targeting vulnerable families. The documents included strategies for identifying high-value targets during crisis periods, methods for documenting incompetence evidence, and procedures for expediting court proceedings through his administrative connections. The key is moving quickly once you've identified a protection opportunity, Bradley explained. Grief and emotional distress create windows of vulnerability that close rapidly as people adapt to their circumstances. Emma understood this principle and acted decisively to protect your interests before you could make irreversible mistakes. Bradley's clinical description of exploiting grief made my hands clench under the table. He was describing my father's death and my emotional pain as a window of vulnerability that Emma had exploited decisively for profit. What happens if Frank challenges the guardianship? Tyler asked, approaching our table and introducing himself as my friend and support person. Carmen had planned this intervention to gather additional admissions. Bradley seemed momentarily surprised by Tyler's presence, but continued speaking confidently. Guardianship challenges are lengthy and expensive processes that rarely succeed once initial orders are granted. The legal standard requires clear and convincing evidence of competence, which is difficult to establish when emergency proceedings have documented ongoing incapacity. Even if the original evidence was misleading, Tyler pressed. Evidence is interpreted through legal frameworks, Bradley said smoothly. Emotional instability, financial inexperience, and social isolation are legitimate concerns regardless of their underlying causes. Emma documented genuine behaviors that support guardianship necessity under current legal standards. Bradley's admission that he and Emma had manipulated legal standards to criminalize normal grief responses provided crucial evidence for Carmen's corruption charges. He was essentially confessing to abusing emergency procedures designed to protect genuinely incapacitated individuals. The most damaging revelation came when Bradley discussed their profit-sharing arrangements. Emma handles target identification and evidence gathering while I manage legal procedures and court coordination. We split proceeds from asset optimization 60-40, reflecting our respective contributions to successful outcomes. I realized Bradley had just confessed to operating a criminal enterprise that systematically targeted grieving families and stole their assets through fraudulent legal proceedings. His casual discussion of target identification and proceeds revealed the predatory nature of their operation. Carmen's investigator had instructed me to ask about specific legal protections, hoping to gather evidence of corruption. Bradley, how can you guarantee the hearing will go smoothly? What if Judge Williams asks difficult questions about the evidence? Judge Williams trusts my assessment of emergency situations, Bradley said with obvious pride. I've handled hundreds of guardianship cases, and she relies on my professional judgment about which cases require expedited processing. When I flag a case as urgent, she generally follows my recommendations about protective measures. Bradley had just admitted to corrupting judicial proceedings by influencing Judge Williams' decisions through his administrative position. His abuse of the judge's trust to expedite fraudulent cases provided grounds for criminal charges and judicial misconduct investigations. As our conversation concluded, Bradley handed me additional documents that supposedly outlined the terms of my future living arrangements under Emma's guardianship. The papers described supervised housing, controlled spending allowances, and mandatory counseling requirements that essentially amounted to house arrest for an emotionally healthy adult. Frank, by tonight you'll understand that this guardianship is the best outcome for everyone involved, Bradley said as he prepared to leave. Emma will have the authority to make optimal decisions about your inheritance. You'll be protected from financial stress, and your father's legacy will be managed by someone with clear judgment and business expertise. After Bradley left, Tyler and I sat in stunned silence, processing the full scope of what we'd recorded. Bradley had confessed to operating a criminal conspiracy, corrupting court proceedings, and systematically targeting vulnerable families for financial exploitation. His admissions provided evidence of multiple felonies and grounds for federal investigation under organized crime statutes. Carmen reviewed the recordings immediately and confirmed they contained sufficient evidence to destroy Emma's guardianship petition and initiate criminal prosecutions. Bradley's detailed descriptions of their planning process, profit-sharing arrangements, and corruption of judicial proceedings would support charges of conspiracy, fraud, elder abuse, and corruption of public officials. Frank, Bradley just confessed to crimes that carry decades in prison, Carmen said as we prepared for the hearing. Emma's guardianship petition is now the least of her problems. She's about to face federal criminal charges for operating an organized criminal enterprise that targets grieving families. The irony wasn't lost on me that Emma's greed and Bradley's overconfidence had led them to create documented evidence of their own crimes. They'd been so certain of their victory that they'd carelessly revealed the full extent of their criminal operation to the very person they were trying to destroy. The courtroom atmosphere felt electric with tension as Emma arrived with her expensive attorney Richard Morrison from Morrison, Taylor & Associates. Emma looked confident and professionally dressed, but I noticed her glancing nervously around the room as she saw the unexpected number of people present supporting my case. Carmen had assembled an impressive array of witnesses. Maria Santos with her recanted testimony. Dr. Green, with his clarifying medical statement, extended family members who could testify about Emma's manipulative behavior, and business associates who would confirm my competent management of Dad's company. Judge Patricia Williams entered promptly at 9 o'clock, and I could see her surprise at the formal legal motions Carmen had filed requesting investigation of court corruption and procedural irregularities. The emergency hearing Emma had expected to be a rubber stamp approval of her guardianship petition had evolved into a comprehensive examination of her conspiracy. "I've reviewed the emergency motions filed by Mr. Thompson's counsel," Judge Williams announced. "This case will proceed differently than originally scheduled. Before considering any guardianship petition, this court will address serious allegations of procedural misconduct and evidence tampering." Emma's attorney looked confused and unprepared for the changed circumstances. He'd clearly expected a straightforward hearing based on Emma's documented evidence, not a detailed investigation of criminal conspiracy. His client's pale expression suggested she was beginning to understand that her careful plans were unraveling. Carmen stood to present our opening argument, her professional confidence commanding the courtroom's attention. "Your Honor, the evidence will show that Ms. Emma Thompson has filed a fraudulent guardianship petition based on fabricated evidence, coerced witness testimony, and corruption of court procedures through her relationship with Court Administrator Bradley Hoffman." "Your Honor." Emma's attorney interrupted. "These are serious accusations that go far beyond the scope of a guardianship hearing. We object to this expansion of proceedings without proper notice." Judge Williams fixed him with a stern look. "Counselor, when allegations of court corruption and criminal conspiracy are presented with documented evidence, this court has an obligation to investigate thoroughly. Your objection is overruled." Carmen began presenting our evidence systematically, starting with Maria Santos's recanted testimony about coercion and intimidation. Maria's description of Emma's threats against her nephew brought gasps from the courtroom gallery, and her obvious fear while testifying made her credibility unquestionable. "Ms. Thompson threatened to call immigration authorities on my nephew if I didn't sign papers saying Mr. Frank was acting crazy." Maria testified in heavily accented but clear English. "She told me Mr. Frank was drinking too much and making bad decisions, but I never saw him drunk or acting strange. He was always respectful and kind, just very sad after his father died." Dr. Green's testimony proved equally devastating to Emma's case. His explanation of how grief counseling notes had been misrepresented as evidence of mental instability revealed the sophisticated nature of Emma's deception. "Grief counseling is a healthy response to loss, not evidence of mental incompetence," Dr. Green testified. Mr. Thompson was processing his father's death in an emotionally mature way. Ms. Thompson specifically requested copies of his medical records, claiming she wanted to help him access appropriate mental health resources. I now understand she was gathering evidence to use against him in legal proceedings. Emma's attorney attempted to discredit our witnesses through cross-examination, but their consistent testimonies and supporting documentation made their credibility unassailable. Each witness revealed another aspect of Emma's systematic deception and manipulation. The extended family testimony proved particularly damaging. Aunt Rebecca and Uncle Thomas described Emma's campaign to portray me as mentally unstable, her request for them to monitor and report my behavior, and their shock at learning the true purpose of her concerned inquiries. Emma asked us to watch Frank for signs of emotional breakdown or poor judgment, Uncle Thomas testified. She said she was worried about his mental state and might need family support for an intervention. We thought she was being a caring sister. We had no idea she was building a legal case against him. Carmen then played the recordings of Emma's conversations, including her admission of the criminal conspiracy with Bradley Hoffman and her detailed description of targeting grieving families for financial exploitation. The courtroom fell silent as Emma's voice filled the space, describing her systematic plan to steal my inheritance and expand their operation to other vulnerable families. Emma's attorney requested an immediate recess after hearing the recordings, clearly unprepared for the documented evidence of his client's criminal admissions. During the break, I could see him having an intense conversation with Emma, who appeared increasingly panicked as she realized the full extent of her recorded confessions. When proceedings resumed, Carmen presented Bradley Hoffman's recorded admissions from our morning coffee meeting. His detailed description of their profit-sharing arrangements, methods for targeting families, and corruption of court procedures provided comprehensive evidence of organized criminal enterprise. Mr. Hoffman admits to identifying protection opportunities among grieving families, expediting fraudulent guardianship proceedings through his court position, and splitting proceeds from stolen assets with Ms. Thompson, Carmen explained to the court. This represents systematic exploitation of vulnerable individuals through corruption of legal processes designed to protect them. Emma's attorney made one final attempt to salvage his client's position by arguing that the recordings were taken without consent and might not be admissible. Judge Williams quickly dismissed this objection. Counselor, these recordings document ongoing criminal conspiracies and corruption of this court's proceedings. They are absolutely admissible under crime-fraud exceptions to confidentiality protections. Your client's privacy interests do not extend to criminal planning sessions. The final blow to Emma's case came when Carmen presented the forged will documents. Handwriting analysis confirmed that Emma had altered Dad's original will to include the incompetence clause that formed the basis of her guardianship petition. The original will executed by Mr. James Thompson leaves his construction business specifically to his son Frank, with instructions that it remain in the family to continue serving the community, Carmen testified. Ms. Thompson forged the incompetence clause to create legal justification for stealing assets her father never intended her to control. Emma's attorney stood to make closing arguments, but his heart clearly wasn't in defending a case that had been thoroughly destroyed by documented evidence of criminal conspiracy. Your Honor, while some of the evidence presented today is concerning my client's primary motivation has always been protecting her brother's interests during a difficult period of grief and adjustment, Judge Williams interrupted him sharply. Counselor, the evidence shows your client engaged in systematic criminal enterprise targeting multiple families through fraudulent legal proceedings. This court will not entertain arguments that frame documented criminal conspiracy as family concern. Carmen's closing argument focused on the broader implications of Emma and Bradley's crimes. Your Honor, this case represents an attack on the fundamental purpose of guardianship law. Emergency procedures designed to protect genuinely incapacitated individuals were corrupted to enable theft from grieving families. Justice requires not only dismissing this fraudulent petition, but ensuring criminal prosecution of those who perverted legal processes for personal profit. As Judge Williams prepared to render her decision, Emma's attorney made one final, desperate move. He requested permission to withdraw from the case, citing his client's failure to disclose material information about criminal activity. His abandonment of Emma in open court provided a dramatic conclusion to her systematic destruction. Ms. Thompson, you are now representing yourself, Judge Williams announced coldly. Do you have anything to say before this court renders its decision? Emma stood shakily, her confident facade completely gone. For a moment I thought she might confess and apologize, showing some remnant of the sister I'd once loved. Instead, she attempted one final manipulation. Your Honor, I was trying to protect my brother from making mistakes during an emotional crisis. Bradley Hoffman misled me about legal procedures and convinced me that guardianship was the appropriate solution. I was manipulated by someone I trusted, just like Frank was manipulated by his grief. The attempt to portray herself as another victim while maintaining that I needed protection demonstrated Emma's complete inability to acknowledge responsibility for her actions. Judge Williams' expression showed she found this final deception particularly offensive. Ms. Thompson, the evidence shows you initiated and planned this conspiracy, recruited Mr. Hoffman as your accomplice, and systematically targeted your own family for financial exploitation. Your attempt to claim victim status while maintaining that your brother requires protection reveals a level of manipulation that confirms the criminal nature of your actions. Judge Williams's voice carried the weight of absolute authority as she prepared to announce her decision. The courtroom was completely silent, everyone understanding that we were witnessing the conclusion of a criminal conspiracy that had threatened not only my family but the integrity of legal processes designed to protect vulnerable people. Judge Patricia Williams delivered her verdict with a clarity and force that left no doubt about the gravity of Emma's crimes. This court finds that Ms. Emma Thompson has perpetrated a criminal conspiracy to defraud her brother of his lawful inheritance through systematic abuse of guardianship procedures. Her petition is not only denied but dismissed with prejudice, and I am ordering immediate investigation of all similar cases processed through this court. The relief I felt hearing those words was overwhelming, but Judge Williams wasn't finished. She continued with additional orders that went far beyond simply protecting my inheritance. Ms. Thompson will immediately return all assets, properties, and documents unlawfully taken from Mr. Frank Thompson. Furthermore, this court is referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for Criminal Prosecution under organized crime statutes. Emma's face went ashen as the full implications became clear. This wasn't just a failed civil proceeding. She was facing serious criminal charges that could result in decades in prison. Her scheme to steal my inheritance had evolved into a federal case against organized criminal enterprise. Bradley Hoffman will be arrested today on charges of conspiracy, fraud, corruption of public officials, and elder abuse, Judge Williams announced. His abuse of his administrative position to facilitate criminal conspiracies represents a fundamental betrayal of public trust that demands the harshest penalties available under law. Carmen had explained that Bradley's corruption of court procedures elevated their crimes from simple fraud to federal offenses involving organized criminal enterprise. His use of his government position to enable systematic theft from vulnerable families made him subject to RICO prosecution with enhanced penalties. The district attorney's representative, who had been observing the proceedings, stood to address the court. Your Honor, based on the evidence presented today, the state will pursue charges of conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, forgery, and corruption of public officials against both defendants. We believe this case reveals a pattern of criminal activity that may have affected dozens of families across multiple jurisdictions. I watched Emma being handcuffed and led away by court officers, still hardly believing that my loving sister had become a predatory criminal who systematically destroyed families for profit. Her final look toward me contained no remorse or recognition of the pain she'd caused, only anger at being caught and defeated. The immediate aftermath of the trial focused on recovering my stolen assets and ensuring other families could seek justice for similar crimes. Emma had already transferred significant funds to accounts Bradley controlled, requiring forensic accounting to trace and recover all diverted assets. Carmen's investigation revealed that Emma and Bradley's conspiracy had indeed affected multiple families across Colorado and neighboring states. The Morrison family farm, the Chen family restaurant, and James Davis's military pension had all been stolen through variations of the same fraudulent guardianship scheme that nearly destroyed my life. Working with federal prosecutors, we established a victim recovery fund that would help other families reclaim their stolen assets and rebuild their lives. The publicity surrounding our case encouraged additional victims to come forward, revealing the full scope of Emma and Bradley's criminal enterprise. Susan Morrison was the first victim to contact us after seeing news coverage of the trial. Her elderly father's farm had been sold to developers after Emma and Bradley convinced a judge that his children needed emergency guardianship authority to protect him from financial exploitation. The irony was devastating. They'd stolen his property while claiming to protect him from theft. Your courage in fighting back gave us hope that justice was possible, Susan told me when we met to coordinate recovery efforts. We thought we'd lost everything Dad worked his whole life to build. Now there's a chance to get some of it back and see the people who hurt him face consequences for their crimes. James Davis, the disabled veteran whose pension had been diverted to accounts Emma controlled, became a powerful advocate for reforming guardianship laws to prevent future exploitation. His military service background gave him credibility with legislators who might otherwise dismiss such cases as family disputes. Mrs. Chen's situation proved most heartbreaking. because her family's immigration status had made them reluctant to challenge the fraudulent guardianship that cost them their restaurant. Emma and Bradley had specifically targeted immigrant families, knowing their fear of legal authorities would minimize resistance to their theft. The construction company that Dad built flourished under my restored leadership, with contracts increasing as word spread about our family's victory over corruption and our commitment to ethical business practices. Several competitors who had planned to acquire our assets through Emma's conspiracy now offered partnerships based on mutual respect rather than hostile takeover. Carmen continued representing our family in ongoing civil litigation to recover damages from Emma's crimes. The law firm that had employed her attorney faced potential sanctions for failing to investigate their client's criminal background before filing fraudulent legal documents. Tyler's friendship deepened through our shared experience fighting corruption and protecting vulnerable families. His cybersecurity expertise proved invaluable in helping other victims document their cases and recover digital evidence of the conspiracy that had targeted them. Dr. Green became an advocate for protecting patient privacy from family members who might misuse medical information for legal manipulation. His experience with Emma's deception led him to develop new protocols for verifying the motivations behind family requests for medical records. Maria Santos, who had shown such courage in recanting her coerced testimony, received legal assistance securing proper immigration status for her nephew. Her bravery in standing up to Emma's threats helped expose the intimidation tactics that enabled the conspiracy to function. The extended family relationships that Emma's manipulation had strained were rebuilt through our shared commitment to honesty and mutual support. Aunt Rebecca and Uncle Thomas became regular fixtures at family gatherings, and we established traditions for honoring Dad's memory that Emma's greed had threatened to destroy. 6 months after the trial, Emma was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to conspiracy fraud and elder abuse charges. Bradley received 12 years due to his abuse of public office and his role in corrupting judicial proceedings. Their sentences sent a clear message that criminal exploitation of grieving families would face severe consequences. During Emma's sentencing hearing, she finally showed what might have been genuine remorse for her actions. In a brief statement to the court, she acknowledged the pain she'd caused our family and other victims, though she stopped short of fully accepting responsibility for her choices. "I let greed and resentment cloud my judgment," Emma said, her voice barely audible in the packed courtroom. "I convinced myself I was protecting Frank, but I was really just taking what I thought I deserved. I'm sorry for the families we hurt and for destroying the trust my brother placed in me." Her words provided some closure, but they couldn't repair the relationship we'd once shared or restore the innocence of believing family bonds were unbreakable. Emma had taught me that trust must be earned through consistent actions, not assumed based on blood relationships. The legal reforms that emerged from our case included new requirements for corroborating evidence in emergency guardianship proceedings, mandatory waiting periods before asset transfers, and enhanced penalties for public officials who abuse their positions to facilitate fraud. Carmen drafted much of the legislation that now protects other families from similar exploitation. I established the James Thompson Family Protection Foundation in Dad's memory, providing legal assistance to families facing fraudulent guardianship proceedings and supporting research into elder abuse prevention. The foundation's work ensures that Dad's legacy includes protecting vulnerable people from the kind of predatory behavior that nearly destroyed our family. My personal relationships evolved through the experience of betrayal and recovery. I began dating Sarah Martinez, a social worker who specialized in helping families heal from financial exploitation and abuse. Her understanding of trauma and recovery helped me process the complex emotions surrounding Emma's betrayal without becoming bitter or distrustful of all relationships. The construction business expanded beyond Dad's original vision to include affordable housing development and community revitalization projects. We partnered with nonprofit organizations to build homes for families who had lost everything to economic hardship or criminal exploitation, turning our own experience with near loss into motivation to help others rebuild. Sunday family dinners resumed at the house that Emma had tried to steal, but with a deeper appreciation for the genuine relationships that sustained us through crisis. We honored Dad's memory by continuing his traditions while building new ones based on the lessons learned from surviving betrayal and fighting for justice. The most profound realization from this experience was understanding the difference between biological family and chosen family. Emma's blood relationship meant nothing when she abandoned the values Dad had taught us, while Tyler Carmen and others who stood with us during our darkest moments proved that true family is defined by loyalty, integrity, and mutual support. Looking back on that November morning when David's phone call shattered my world, I realize Emma's betrayal, while devastating, ultimately revealed strengths I didn't know I possessed, and relationships I hadn't fully appreciated. Her attempt to destroy me instead taught me the true meaning of resilience, justice, and the power of standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. Dad's legacy lives on not just in the business he built, but in the values he instilled that helped me fight for justice and protect other families from similar exploitation. Emma tried to steal our inheritance, but she couldn't touch the most valuable things our father left us: integrity, compassion, and the courage to stand up for those who cannot protect themselves. The foundation continues to grow, helping dozens of families each year recover from financial exploitation and rebuild their lives. Each success story represents a victory over the kind of predatory behavior that Emma and Bradley represented, proving that justice and community support can triumph over even sophisticated criminal conspiracies. Today, as I sit in Dad's workshop surrounded by his tools and the smell of sawdust, I understand that inheritance isn't just about money or property. It's about the values passed from one generation to the next, and the responsibility to use whatever advantages we have to protect and serve others. Emma forgot those lessons, but they guide everything I do now. Have you ever faced a situation where someone you trusted completely betrayed that trust? How did you find the strength to fight back and rebuild? I'd love to hear your stories and thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences might help other families facing similar challenges. Thank you for listening to my story and supporting the fight against those who prey on vulnerable families during their darkest moments. Please like this video if it resonated with you. Subscribe to hear more stories about justice and resilience, and share this with anyone who might benefit from knowing they're not alone in facing family betrayal. Remember, true family isn't defined by blood, but by the people who stand with you when everything else falls apart. Here's to building relationships based on genuine love, loyalty, and shared values that can weather any storm life throws our way.